It's Jim with Shiloh Kahal. Today I just want to discuss the resurrection and the day of resurrection. Can't speak for everybody, but my understanding of resurrection, or as the church would celebrate it, Easter, is that Sunday is the resurrection day, Sunday being the first day of the week, and Friday, Good Friday, would be the day that he was crucified. So you got him crucified on Friday, resurrection on Sunday, the first day of the week. Well, what does Scripture tell us about this? And let's just go through the various passages that that I've looked up that we're going to be dealing with. Will be Matthew 28:1, Mark 16:1, Luke 24:1, and John 20:1. And I'll just read them to you because they all pretty much say the same thing. But we turn to Matthew 28:1, and in the new NIV it reads, "After the Sabbath," which would be after Saturday, "at the dawn of the first day of the week," so very early in the morning on the first day of the week, "Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb." Now, it doesn't say he was risen there, but clearly on the first day of the week when they appeared there, he was gone. So that's considered the resurrection. Here we got the NLT, the New Living Translation, early on Sunday morning. "As the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb." What does the King James say? "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began." In the end of the Sabbath. That's interesting. As it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. The end of the Sabbath, dawn. Okay, that's another whole topic. As it began to dawn during the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. So, let me go back up here to the NIV and read what it says after this, after it says this. So, because after the Sabbath, at the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. And there was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. And the angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen." So by this time, first day of the week, he has risen. And that is just as he said, "Come and see the place where they." So basically, that's how the church understands it to be. That according to Matthew, first day of the week, he's been risen by that time. Let's go to Mark 16, and I don't mean to go through them too fast, but they're just it's all pretty much standard fare, standard understanding, and all these scriptures are pretty much the same over and over again. Here's Mark 16. When the Sabbath was over, so Saturday is over. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they can go and anoint Jesus' body. Let's go see what else it says. Anoint Jesus' body. And then very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, so when the Sabbath is over, so Saturday is over, and very early on the first day of the week, which would be Sunday, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in white, sitting in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. And they said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus, the Nazarene, who was crucified, but he is risen." So he's risen, first day of the week. That's pretty much assumed that he's risen the first day of the week. And appreciably, all of these, let me go to the King James, but it really doesn't matter which one we go to. It's all going to be the same. After the Sabbath and the first day of the week. So here's King James. "When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, mother of James, and Salome brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week." So there's the resurrection on the first day of the week, the day after the Sabbath passed. Let's go on to the next passage, which will be Luke 24. It'll be pretty much the same. I'll go into the NIV. "On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices that they had prepared and went to the tomb." It's the same story. "They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen." Remember how I told you. So here we got the first day of the week, very early in the morning. So early on a Sunday morning, they're out there and discovering that he's not there because he has been risen. So we have a Sunday morning, first day of the week, resurrection here. So let me go to John and let me go back to Luke for just a moment, because I'm going to go back to the parallel and it's basically the same thing over and over. English Standard, ESV, first day of the week, early dawn. Berean, first day of the week, very early in the morning. King James, now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning. It really doesn't matter where we go. All of them are going to say the same thing. After the Sabbath, very early in the morning, first day of the week, dawn, the resurrection when they show up. He's been risen. Let's go to John real quick. And we'll go into the NIV, and the NIV reads, "Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the tomb had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter." So early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark. So they don't say anything about the Sabbath, but first day of the week, while it's still dark, she comes and finds the tomb, the stone rolled away, and goes and finds Peter. So there's the resurrection once again. A Sunday morning resurrection. But is that what the scriptures are teaching? Let me share some different information that I'll just tell you up front is going to suggest to us that it is not the first day of the week that he's resurrected, but the seventh day, the day prior on the Sabbath. So let me just go to Matthew 28 again and read it from this is the Yah scriptures we're reading from, derivative of the Hallelujah scriptures, but I think derivative of some of the C.J. Coster's work. So when we get to the Yah scriptures and we read Matthew 21, it reads like this. "Now, after the Sabbath," which, as it read in all the other translations, it was now after the Sabbath or after the Sabbath, "toward dawn on one of the Sabbatou, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam came to see the tomb." That's quite a big difference from everything we've been seeing in the other translations that we received, because how this reads is, "Now after the Sabbath, toward dawn on one of the Sabbaths." That Sabbatou is Sabbaths. So where all the other translations are saying on the first day of the week, now after the Sabbath and on the first day of the week is how everybody else is interpreting it. I'm going to come back to it. We're going to go to Strong's and to the Greek to see what is correct here. And just so you know, this is all related to some work I did with Miatan Sabbaton. It's the same issue played out again with a different subject matter in line, because when I did a video called Miatan Sabbaton, it was all associated with what is the correct Sabbath day of the week. The church is teaching that, it was moved to the Christian Sabbath of Sunday, the first day of the week. And they will point to these various passages in these various translations that are telling everybody that they met on the first day of the week. And I'll come back to that because it's all related. So let me go to Mark 2, which is, and I'll come back to Mark 2 twice here in a minute, but here is the translation of Mark 2 in the Yah scriptures. "And very early morning on one of the Sabbatou, they came to the tomb when the sun had risen." So they're not saying on the first day of the week. This translation is saying on one of the Sabbatou, on one of the Sabbaths. And I will give you a timeline on that too. But let me also, I'll come back to this one. Let me go to Luke 24. And on Luke 24, "And on one of the Sabbatou, which is one of the Sabbaths, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and found the stone rolled away." So it wasn't the first day of the week that they're showing up with their spices. It's on one of the Sabbaths. So it'd be a Saturday that they're showing up. Let me go to John 20. And on John 21, it says, "And on one of the Sabbatou, Miriam from Magdala came to the tomb in the morning when it was still dim and saw that the stone had been rolled away." So I'm going to head off and we're going to go to the Greek and see which of these seems more correct. But before I do that, let me go back. I said I was going to go back to Mark 2 because this is really the crux of the very important passage that I'm getting ready to share with you. Because so far, in all four of these passages, we have somebody showing up very early in the day, either on the first day of the week or on the Sabbath. It doesn't really matter, but we make the assumption that he had been risen just before that, and hadn't risen in the days prior at some point in time and was gone by the time they got there. We've all assumed that he is rising on that same day or maybe the night before. But before, well, if you're going to rise on Sunday, on the first day of the week, then it's got to be in the morning anyway that you're rising, which would have been Sunday. But let me go down to Mark 9 because it makes it very clear. Here, I want to go back. Before I do that, let me go back to Mark 9 here. And we're going to go see if I can. Here's 9. Here's how it reads in the King James Bible. Now, when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week. So if you have a question about, people showing up in the morning and him being gone, and the angels telling him, the messengers telling them that he's already risen. Well, okay. But here in Mark, and it's the only one, I've looked around, I haven't found anything in Matthew or John or Luke associated with, a statement about when Yahushua or Jesus rises. But here in Mark 9, he makes the statement, now when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week. So, where we might be speculating when we talk about the fact that they're all showing up early on the first day or early in the morning and he was already gone. But according to Mark, there's nothing to speculate. It was that first day of the week that he was resurrected, according to all the translations we received. Let me go to my Yah scriptures and see how it reads in verse 9 of Mark 16. And having risen in the morning on one of the Sabbatou. Okay. So just like in the other passages, the Yah scriptures are telling us that he's risen on the Sabbath, whereas all of the other translations are telling us that he rose on the first day of the week. Okay, let me pause here and go get set up for the Greek. Okay, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel because I've already done a pretty long video related to what I'm getting ready to share with you. But let me go to Matthew 28 and see how they are translating this information. So after the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, what does that look like in Greek? So we go to the Greek and we see that over here's the English. After then the Sabbath, so that's opse de sabbaton. So we have sabbaton, Sabbaths here. We have sabbaton here, and Strong's 4521 being interpreted and translated as the Sabbaths. And then we go on to say, we keep on going down, it being dawn toward the first day. First of all, you can see they're inserting the and day, but the real words, the Greek for this is mian sabbaton. So we have the same word here, sabbaton, the same Greek. Strong's translation of the Greek, but they're choosing to translate this not as Sabbath again, but as week. And this is it's not a largely recurrent theme. You'll see if you go back and look at my Miaton Sabbaton, you'll see it's kind of, it's a targeted type of translation associated with this Mian Sabbaton or Miaton Sabbaton. So here we've got the Sabbaton being translated as the Sabbaths here, but here we've got Sabbaton being translated as week. And I'll just quickly go and look at the Strong's the Strong's lexicon for Sabbaton. The word means Sabbath. It's pretty clear, not week. There's nothing in here about week. Okay, so let's go visit the other passages. Here's Mark, and let's go into the Greek. And what do we have? And having passed the sabbatou, here we go again, sabbatou. This one's not sabbaton, sabbatou. I'm not quite sure what sabbatou, how that differs. I think sabbaton would be, I believe sabbaton is plural, like one of the Sabbaths. That's why that's what it is. That's why they translate it as Sabbaths. But here's sabbatou, which is a singular. So and having passed the Sabbath, sabbatou being translated as Sabbath, we're going past the Sabbath. Now let me, because this could be confusing, you have to understand, and I will revisit this at the end, the timeline that we're at. You have to understand that there was already a Sabbath. He was actually also crucified on the Sabbath, which sounds funny unless you are paying attention to the Moedim and the feast days, and the fact that we had Passover on the 14th, and then we had a Sabbath on the 15th, the first day of unleavened bread, which would have been the third day prior to his resurrection, which I'll come back to in just a minute. So we have, and having passed the Sabbath, sabbatou being translated Sabbath, we come on down here, and Mary Magdalene, the mother of James, having brought spices. I guess it's in the next passage. Then we have. By the way, I want to point out, I'm headed down to this miatan sabbaton in just a second, but I do want to point out this prōi because it's very similar to something we're going to get into in just a minute. But here we come down to the miatan sabbaton. Well, it's translated consistently in these targeted places. Mia is translated as first, tan of the, and sabbaton week. But what does the Strong's say these words mean? What does Mia mean? 1521, it means one. So it doesn't mean first, only in targeted areas that I explained in miatan sabbaton, only in targeted areas where they're trying to deal with moving the Sabbath day to the first day of the week, and they're trying to make this narrative, and they're parsing. They're just mistranslating. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose, but they're so clearly mistranslating. It's the only places they're mistranslating. Go to my miatan sabbaton, you'll see that this word is translated 282 times. Of all the things that it can be translated, 282 times is one, and only 9 times is first, and they're all targeted around these particular subject matters. So, Mia, which is heis, the Greek is heis, Mia is the Greek transliteration, and you'd have to get into all of that. But this is heis. This word here in black is heis. Mia is the transliteration. But it's all this word, and it's one. And then you've got tan of the sabbaton that they've translated as week, but going back to the Strong's, it's Sabbath. So if you remember 16:1, it basically says having passed the Sabbath, and then goes on to say that on very early on one of the Sabbaths. In fact, let me just go to this, see if I can get the lexicon up here real quick. Nope, not the lexicon. Interlinear, is that it? Yeah, interlinear. Here they're showing miatan sabbaton, and they're not. I'm not going to go here. I'm sorry. This would be a bit of, but this miatan sabbaton is one of the Sabbaths. So let me go on back, and we'll go to Luke. And it's pretty much the same thing. Here's Luke, but Luke 24:1. But when we go into the Greek, it is te di miatan sabbaton again, where here they've targeted and translated first day of the week, very early. So then what would that be? They're saying first day of the week, but it should be, however, on one of the Sabbaths in Luke 24, as we saw the Yah scriptures translate. Here's John 20. It's the same thing, but I'll show it to you real quick. Now, the first day of the week, miatan sabbaton, should be on one of the Sabbaths, but they've chosen to translate first day of the week. So they are telling you that everywhere you're seeing in each of these passages related to Mary and the others coming to the tomb with their spices, it's on the Sabbath and not the first day of the week. It's Saturday, not Sunday. It's very early on the Sabbath. Now let me go back to Mark, and let's go to 16:9, because this is, if we want to, again, going back to, do we want to speculate on when he was risen? Mark actually tells us exactly when he's risen. So here we are in Mark 16:9. Now, but let me go back and see what the let me get to the parallel New Living. So when Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared to Mary Magdalene. Okay, so now we're going to go into the Greek of that. And having risen now early, Again, I pointed out prōi early. Look at this word, prōi. What does it mean? It means early in the morning, of course. So this is very early in the morning. They're saying first day of the week. Prōtē, that's interesting. Let me go see what 44:13. Okay, because this is important too. First, chief, foremost, principal. So even though they're mistranslating this, prōtē sabbatou to be first day of the week, this prōtē here, this would be early, but this would be first or chief or foremost. So this would be Sabbath, where they're translating, this is sabbatou. And so they've given us of the week here, but that's mistranslated again. So how they're translating is that early, prōi, the chief or very first thing of the week is what they're telling us. But over here, it's reading day prōtē, prōi, I'm sorry, early, prōtē, chief or first, sabbatou, Sabbath. So what are they saying here? Having risen now early, the very first thing or chief thing on a Sabbath. Then he appeared to Mary. So what are we saying here? What does the Greek say? Having risen now early, the first, which is actually early, but this is first. So he's saying early, the chief, the foremost, the very first thing that happens as we hit the Sabbath. Now, if you embrace a evening to evening day, then that would be the very first thing on the Sabbath would be Friday night, because that's when your new day starts. That's when your Sabbath starts. So that would be chief, first thing, early on. This is, I guess, in my mind, this would be one of the reasons why this can't work this way. There are many evidences and why I lean toward and strongly lean toward a sunrise to sunrise. I mean, the day is more natural and it goes from sunrise to sunrise, not sunset to sunset. But if you believe in a sunset to sunset, then he would have risen first thing on the chief at the very beginning, the chief, the first part of the Sabbath. So that would have been Friday night. He would have been risen Friday night. Now we know that you keep following, then the women and the people show up early in the morning on the first Sabbath, which would be, this is evenings, Friday night would be evening, so it would have to be Saturday morning. But if you are a subscriber to morning, then he would have, the moment that there is daybreak and we have a new day, the very first thing that happens is Messiah is risen on that day. But the main thing that I'm pointing out here, more than anything else, is what day. What day? Having risen now early, the first day of the week? No, this is the translations everywhere we turn, and this is what the church is giving us, the first day of the week. But what does the Greek say? Early, chief and foremost of the Sabbath. So he was raised on the Sabbath. Okay, so I just want to take a moment to share a timeline, and this is in development. I mean, I just started working. I'm listening to another gentleman that I respect, and I'm trying to follow his information and put it down and, do some due diligence here. But let me tell you what I've discovered and what I have found. According to Mark, he early, chief, first thing on a Sabbath, which is day 7. If you're looking over here, it's day 7. Would have been the 18th of the first month for the Hebrews. So we got a Sabbath, and the chief first thing that happens is there's a resurrection. Shortly thereafter, we've got them coming, and the women coming, the people coming, and with the spices and meeting up with the angels, saying, "Nope, he's gone. The stones rolled away, and he's been resurrected." Because it's already happened by the time they get there. So while they came early, they didn't come as early as he resurrected. So this is according to Mark, the day of resurrection, and not day 1, which would be Sunday. The 19th would have been day 1, would have been Sunday. Resurrection had already happened by that day. Let's back this up, because I'll just tell you that one of the things I'm really trying to decide, and one of the things I'm looking for, is there's teaching. Did he rise on the third day, or did he rise after the third day? Because when we get into, the analogy of analogy, is that the right word? Metaphor of him being as Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days. And a few references where it says after 3 days. But I find, let me just help let you follow me over here. I find as I do all of a word search study, when we get to Matthew 16:21, the comment is that he's going to be raised again on the third day. Well, actually, the way this one's worded is, and to be raised again the third day. So to be raised the third day. That is suggestive of on the third day. Matthew 17:23, and the third day he shall be raised up. So the third day, not after the third day, on the third day, he's going to be raised up. Matthew 20:19, and the third day he shall be raised. Mark 9:31, he shall rise the third day. Again, not after the third day, on the third day. Mark 10:34, the third day he shall rise again. Luke 9:22, raised the third day. Luke 13:32, the third day, fix that real quick. The third day I shall be perfected, which is resurrected. I mean, if you keep doing some study on resurrection, you realize that's when everybody's perfected. When you are resurrected, you're going to be perfected. When Messiah, he was pretty perfect in the flesh. I mean, he's the only one that walked perfectly, walked out the Torah, did all those things. But even so, when he received his resurrected body, he was perfected. His body was perfected. It lost the Adamic nature that had sin encoded into it. Anyway, that's another whole story. Luke 18:33, on the third day. Again, on the third day, not after. Luke 24:7, the third day rise again. Luke 24:46, on the third day. Acts 10:40, on the third day. 1 Corinthians 15:4, raised the third day. Here we got Matthew 12:4, and this is where we get into it. It's worded a little bit different way. So I've gone back into Matthew. My word search ended up being 3 and not third. The first word search I did that led me to that other list was for the third day. This one is 3 days. So in Matthew 12:40 it says, be 3 days and 3 nights. I'm not going to go get it, but there will be 3 days and 3 nights that he's in the belly of the whale. And then here in Matthew 26:61, where he's telling them, destroy this temple and I will rebuild it in 3 days, not after 3 days, but in 3 days. Matthew 27:40, again, destroy this Mishkan and I will rebuild it in 3 days. Matthew 27:63, now this is an after 3 days. After 3 days, I am raised. Now, actually, this one occurs during the false testimony. So this is the folks saying, I heard him say that after destroy this temple, and after 3 days, I'm raising it. So this isn't Messiah saying this. This is somebody else, a false testifier, saying this. And we get it again here pretty quickly here in Mark 14:53, just another version of the same thing. But there is a passage where it says after 3 days to rise again. I'd have to go get that exact context. But there is one or two that does say after 3 days. Now, the preponderance of them say on the third day. Occasionally when we get to after 3 days, rise again. Well, when I get to my timeline, I'll kind of point that out, how that can be interpreted to be the same thing as on the third day, potentially. And here's Mark. This is during the false testimony. I already said that. Here's John 2:16, destroy the Mishkan, and in 3 days I shall raise it. So you get the idea. 3 days here. So let me tell you, and then I'm not going to build this case here, but let me tell you that as I count this out, and as I have, first of all, you need to know I do embrace the Zadokite calendar of the Qumran caves of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is a 364-day calendar where we have a consistent, every year the 15th will fall on day 4 of a week. So there's some consistency there, but it also follows, and then of course I'm a subscriber to the Moedim and how it plays out. So we know that on the 14th of every first month is the Passover. And on the Passover, on the 14th, the lamb, the sacrificial lamb, is to be slain between the evenings, which I think is between morning and evening. You kill it during the day. Later in that day, you would eat the meal. And as I read, now I'm listening to somebody, if you are a subscriber to the evening to evening, it all gets way more complicated than this. But if you are a subscriber to morning, it's all pretty much, you wake up on the 14th, you gotta go get the lamb, and I should go get, in fact, I'm going to, and then I'll come back. Okay. All right. So I've stepped off quickly here to go get, I'm in Mark, just to show you what I'm talking about. On the first day of the Matzoth, which would be first day of the Passover, when they were slaughtering the Pesach. So what day do they slaughter the Pesach? Between the evenings on the 14th. So it is when they were slaughtering the Pesach, that's when his Talmidim, which are his disciples, said to him, where do you want us to go and prepare for you to eat the Pesach? So it's on the day when they were slaughtering Pesach that his Talmidim said, where do you want us to go and fix the Pesach for you? I know there are some that think that this cannot be this day that the Talmidim go in cannot actually be, and that evening cannot actually be, that this day that they go cannot be the 14th yet. So they can't slaughter the lamb between the evenings on this day because it's not yet the 14th. And that's the problem you have if you go evening to evening. But if you go morning to morning, you know that on the 14th, you send them out and you're going to have that dinner that night, which makes that Last Supper fit. Okay, so let me come back to my timeline here. So here is the Passover. This is the day when everybody is sacrificing on the Pesach, on Passover. This is the 14th. Everybody, morning comes up and it's time to take the lambs that you've had since the 10th, ideally. I mean, that's the plan. And you're sacrificing, you're slaughtering them for the dinner this night. So between morning and evening, you're slaughtering. So this is what took place. The Talmidim went and prepared this. And when they all got together that evening and had that supper where Messiah says, I have longed to share this last Pesach with you. Well, he was sharing that last Pesach with them. That was the last Pesach. The next time he was going to do it, I mean, he's not going to celebrate the Pesach anymore until he does it with them in heaven. I don't want to overly get into that because I don't want to butcher the way it's worded, but you get the idea. So this is Passover day. This is the slaughtering of the Passover lamb. Then we have the Passover meal, and then later this evening, as we're going, later this evening is when, after they sing their song, they head on out to the Mount of Olives, where he begins to pray, and others fall asleep, and Judas has run off to go grab the Pharisees in their guard. So overnight is when this is all happening. And by morning, they come and get them. I think it was around midnight. I don't know for sure. But around midnight, in the middle of the night, they come and get him. And then they take him. And the morning of the 15th, they're going through all of the machinations between Pilate and all the things that are happening. By 9 o'clock on the 15th, he's being crucified. And he hangs on the cross from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, actually, he hangs on just a little bit longer, but he dies at 3 o'clock-ish. So how does that go? In the, is it the whatever the hour is, the third hour he's crucified, the 9th hour he dies. Doesn't really matter. I don't mean to butcher that. But I know 9 o'clock he ends up being on the cross. 3 o'clock he's dying. So, and then he's taken off before evening. And I know that we are getting some conversations where the Pharisees are saying, hey, we don't want him to mess up our Sabbath and our meal. But they're already, if you know anything about the Moedim, this is, the 14th was not a Sabbath, but the 15th is a Sabbath. So by the time if he shared this Passover meal, which I say he does, on the 14th, and by the time the morning comes around, they're on the Sabbath. This is a Sabbath. And I don't know, do you count this as day one when he hasn't truly actually gone? Because all of the, he's not dead yet. He's not dead till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So he can't go down into Sheol yet until 3 o'clock. Do you count that as a full day? I don't think so. But that will be one full night because he's in the tomb one full night. So on this day then is Sabbath. You can't go buy and sell. You don't get Joseph of Arimathea. You don't get Nicodemus going out buying, and you don't get Miriam. You don't go get the women going out and buying spices. But the day after, Miriam goes out. Can't remember what gospel it is that tells us that, but Miriam goes out and buys spices the day after the Sabbath. Now you have to hear, when you're reading in those Gospels, when they say, when the Sabbath is past, this is the Sabbath that is past. This one ends on the 15th. Sometimes I think I've heard of it called the High Sabbath, but it doesn't really matter. It's a Sabbath day. They weren't allowed to buy and sell. This is what came and went. Then the next day they went and bought spices, and that would be, I'm going to say that's day 1. And that night would be night 2. And then Friday, they didn't go to nobody went there. Apparently nobody went to the tomb on Friday. I do not know why. If there's a reason, I haven't seen it, but that would be day 2 and night 3. So he's now in the tomb in Sheol 2 days. And when he finishes this night, I guess at the end of the day here, he's been 2 nights and 2 days. When he finishes this night, he will have been in 3 days and 2 nights. But then he's raised the next morning, very first thing, chief. First thing in the morning, he's resurrected. So on this 3rd day, this is the 3rd day that he's resurrected. So he's been in Sheol, in the tomb, night 1, night 2, night 3. So 3 nights. And then he's been in Sheol 2 days. One, the next day, which would be Thursday, would be day 1, full day. And then Friday would be day 2, full day. And then the 3rd day would be the Sabbath, and that's when he is raised. So I'm telling you that this would be the timeline for the resurrection. So he eats his Passover meal on what would be a Tuesday, day 3 of a week, the 14th of the 1st month of the Hebrew calendar. On the next day, which is the Sabbath day and the first day of unleavened bread, he is being crucified and he dies and he enters Sheol that, late in the day on that day. And then we have the next day that Miriam goes and buys spices. And then we have another day, and then he rises on the 3rd day, which would be the Sabbath and not the first day of the week. So we do not have him being crucified on this day 6, because this is what the church is teaching, is that he would be crucified on this day, because this would be Friday, and that he's being raised on Sunday, which I don't know how they do that. I've tried to figure this out for so many years, and I used to try to figure it out, according to the church teaching, and I never could get that to make sense to me either. This is the first time, as I am coming into additional understandings, that I can see the entire timeline. I can see the entire timeline. But so to sum this up, I'll just quickly sum it up. All of the modern translations, all of them except for the Yah scriptures that I know of, there might be some others out there, but all of them I go looking for, at least all the low-hanging fruit and everything that I see in Bible Hub, are all telling us 2 things: that everybody's meeting the first day of the week and they're taking Miatan Sabbaton to get there. Before I even summarize, let me go. I want to pull up a spreadsheet that I did during my Miatan Sabbaton video that I did, and I'm going to put the link to that in this video as well, because here are the various passages where hais, which is the Greek word Sabbaton, or Miatan Sabbaton, has been interpreted as 282 times. I've just organized this in this spreadsheet, interpreted as 9 times, and Sabbaton is correctly, I'm saying interpreted, I mean translated. Sabbaton is correctly translated as Sabbath 58 times, Sabbaths as one time, and week 9 times. Notice the congruity between first and week, these 9 times. These are the passages that this is happening in. What is Matthew 21? I just went through it. This is all about the resurrection. Now, after the Sabbath, as it began to dawn on the first day of the week. Now, this first day of the week and the resurrection is one of the reasons the church will give you for why they are now moved the Sabbath to the first day of the week, because that's the resurrection day, and they're just honoring the resurrection day. Here we got Mark 2. It's the same thing. It's the resurrection account very early on the first day of the week, and then we go. This is where they're taking the Miatan Sabbaton and saying first day of the week when it should say on one of the Sabbaths. But this is the same passage, after Mary had gone and collected up the spices, and very early on the first day of the week, which she did on a Sabbath. Okay, Mark 16:9. This is what I've been sharing in this video, that he was risen early, prōi, first chief, whatever that word, prōtē, chief thing on the Sabbath, not of the week. So the actual Greek says he was risen early, first thing on the Sabbath. And then you got Luke 18:12, which is different. It wasn't really part of, this is really more related to sabbaton, but it's not related to the same topic. I don't know how they got to, for whatever reason, they translated sabbaton to week here. But here we are with the resurrection account from Luke 24:21. It's the same thing I've been talking about. First day of the week should be on one of the Sabbaths. Same thing here's in John 21. It's the resurrection account. Again, they've translated as first day of the week when the Greek says miaton sabbaton, on one of the Sabbaths. Here's John 29. Now, when it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, I can't remember what that was. Doesn't matter. It's very similar. It should be translated as on one of the Sabbaths. I'd have to go see what that was. Here's 27 that the church uses to say that Paul was meeting on the first day of the week, but he's not. He's meeting first miaton sabbaton on one of the Sabbaths when the disciples came together, which is what they do on a Sabbath. All Sabbaths involve breaking bread. That's the way it's always been. You get together, you share, and you feast together. You eat together. It's a Sabbath celebration. So that's what would be taking place on a Sabbath, but it reads miaton sabbaton on one of the Sabbaths and not on the first day of the week. 1 Corinthians 16:2 is not related to those two things, but it's still the same thing. It's mian sabbaton, which basically means you're to lay aside something every Sabbath. And then you got Revelation 12, where they're taking first, where they're saying first woe is past. It's another topic altogether. But okay, so this is a spreadsheet from my miaton sabbaton video. If you really want to see how I expounded that, you're welcome to go see the miaton sabbaton video. Let me just summarize again. So I know all the translations are telling everybody in churchdom that the resurrection took place on the first day of the week, that Miriam and all those folks showed up on the first day of the week. And so that's why we have Easter happening on Sunday and Good Friday on Friday. But the scriptures show, I have one translation that renders it correctly, translates it correctly, on one of the Sabbaths, early on one of the Sabbaths, first thing on a Sabbath, first day on the Sabbath. By the way, let me just confirm, this was a Sabbath here on the 15th. This was the next Sabbath. So this is on one of the Sabbaths. After the Sabbath, this is on one of the Sabbaths over here. But the Greek also, go study out the Greek. You don't have to argue with the translations. Go back to the Greek that they're all supposed to be translating from, and it's miaton sabbaton or miaton sabbaton on one of the Sabbaths. So when was the resurrection? It was early on a Sabbath, the Sabbath following Passover. Thank you, and may you be Baruch.